Buckle up, excellence junkies, because this podcast is definitely for you. Welcome to Rocket Fuel. Do you wish that you could surround yourself with people that love to kick ass just like you? Well, come to my party, baby, and meet some of the brightest stars in the entrepreneurial galaxy, because it is my mission to give these entrepreneurs a platform to declare what they are on this planet to accomplish and to show you why they are rocket fuel. And we're live, guys. Oh my goodness. I'm always excited to introduce you Rocketeers to these like amazing guests, because I'm lucky. I get to meet people that are truly dedicated to being rocket fuel for people's lives and changing lives. And so what I want to ask you today, I wonder if we have some Rocketeer listeners out there that have had some weird shit happen to them. That's a good way to introduce.
That's a good way.
Weird shit happens. It's like, do I have ghosts? Do I just got this feeling? I just got this download. And specifically, you may have conflict with it because it may not kind of jive with your religion, right? You may feel like, oh my gosh, I can't tell anybody that I have these experiences because it may not be accepted. And so today I have the honor to introduce you to a guest who whose expertise is really working with women specifically that have these experiences to say, guess what? You have an inner calling. And let's kind of tap into that and figure out what you're meant to do. So Jennifer Lonnberg, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Podcast. You're the founder of the Divine Alchemy Academy, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
That is correct.
So tell me a little more. I mean, let's kind of rewind when it comes to like this whole story of you know, I don't want to play around and say, oh, I see dead people, but I mean, is that what happens for some people?
It can be. So I want to back up even further. How do you not be excited after that intro? I'm like, woo, I am ready to go now.
Awesome.
So a lot of times what happens is like, where I started to work with women and the things that I was finding is that we have this intuition, right?
Mm-hmm.
And everybody has it. It's just on different levels. But what I've been finding a lot is there's a lot of women who are like me, who grew up in the Christian background, and they have the weird shit happen, right? Like you said a minute ago. So this could be some weird feeling that you get and you just know something's going to happen, even though you don't know why or whatever, or you get a weird feeling and then you get goosebumps everywhere. And then somebody says something or the phone rings, or you, even for your business, right? You get some weird, like, oh my gosh, I should try this. You get this idea that you should try, and then you talk yourself out of it because it doesn't make logical sense.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So there's so many different ways that this can show up for people. But as we keep moving into this awakening, everybody's talking about the Great Awakening. As we do that, we're becoming more in alignment and more fine-tuned to the spiritual nature that's really in all of us anyway.
So let's talk about this, seriously, in the sense that I'm in agreement. I feel we all have intuitive capabilities, right? There's so much power in our brains that we have not yet even understood how to utilize. And there are certain people that are more intuitive. They're more in tune to that frequency than others are. And it's, in general, it has been considered something that is witchy or, not accepted in religion. So I would like to kind of sit in that a little bit more and ask you about what has changed, right? What has changed that has allowed people to feel comfortable? Like, has something changed within religion? Has something changed just within society in and of itself? Where, I mean, we can kid around about it, but like in my life, I don't feel like it's it's weird or witchy at all. I feel like and I'm a scientist, right? So I have a doctorate in pharmacy. I'm a scientist, and I feel like, yeah, absolutely. There are energetic wavelengths. There are things that some people have greater perception for than others. And is this something that we can be taught and we can strengthen? So I just asked you a whole bunch of questions. So
Yeah.
let's go back to the religion thing
Yeah,
first.
so with all of that, okay, so I don't really know that religion itself is changing, but what I do know is that on a broader perspective. So if we look at this just all across the board, we talk about basic things like I like to make everything that feels really woo woo. It's really not. It's just looking at it from a different perspective. So if we think of there's so much corporate burnout, right? There's so many
Yeah.
people that are like, I just can't do this anymore. There's a lot of people feeling called to something different. Like they feel like, okay, I've been doing this corporate thing. It just doesn't feel good anymore. I feel like something's missing. I don't know what that is. But they feel this soul calling, right? So they feel their heart
Mm.
calling them to something different. But then we get into the no, I just need to do my job. I just need to focus. I just need to whatever. We talk ourselves out of whatever the soul calling is. And I think, especially with everything that's played out over the last couple of years, more people are in that I can't do this. I'm burnt out. This is not like, isn't there more to life? Like, what is there that I'm missing? Right. And
Yeah.
so that's what it is. And what's really interesting is the same for me when I wrote my first book, Embodied Grace, A Woman's Path to Empowerment. I just wanted to be happy. I'm like, the corporate thing was
Mm.
not working anymore. Like I couldn't even be there because of some things that had gone down in corporate America where they just laid a bunch of people off, so they lost their retirement and all these things, and I'm like, I
Ugh.
just can't align with this anymore. So this was years ago, right? Like 10 years probably at least, if not longer. And time goes so fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, so then I'm
I'm
like,
with you.
okay, so what am I supposed to do? Like, what? And I just felt almost guilty because I'm like, I felt like there was something more. And
Mm.
from the outside looking in, like we had the house, the dog, the kids, the car, the only thing we didn't have was a white picket fence around the house. But I mean, literally, like from the American dream standpoint, or what that used to be 10 years ago, it looked like everything was good. So I had a little bit of guilt of feeling like there was something more. Um,
Yes.
the interesting thing for me is that the psychic ability has always been on, but I was trying to deny that because I didn't want to be weird, right? Like I didn't want
Right.
to be that person that was weird. Plus I grew up in church, so was it bad? Like whatever. So I had all of these different things going on telling me not to use the intuitive part of me. But when I
Mhm.
finally came to that surrender moment where I'm like, "Okay, God, you did this to me, so you either show me what I'm supposed to do with it or take it away," right?
Yeah.
And I had prayed for years for it to go away, and it never went away. Well, once I said, "Show me what to do," then boom, like everything just shifted, just
Ooh.
instantly.
Yeah, okay, so so many things to unpack there. Um, one, just using the word alignment, and I feel like it
Mhm,
gets thrown out a lot, and
mhm,
I want us to, as Rocketeers, to kind of just think like what that means, right? So when we're experiencing that friction,
mhm,
right? It's just like energetically, it's just saying, "Hey, you're not on that same wavelength." You're creating, that you're canceling things out and you're creating this like static, right?
mhm,
And and so you have just because you have all the things that other people or society tell you that you should have, and that's representative of what success or peace looks like or whatever. It's very difficult when some of us sit there going, okay, I checked off the boxes, and how come this doesn't feel right? Feel right. And that's because you're not in alignment with what you're intended to do. And so you have to, my understanding what you're saying is that it's a hard thing to kind of hear that, like, oh, what do you mean what I'm intended to do? And if you like change your path, like what do I do when I tell my mom, my husband, my wife, or whatever, like, I'm not feeling that I'm intended to do that. You have like
right?
tables flipping, what the
Right?
hell do you mean,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's interesting because we've been so conditioned to think that we have to work hard, do the things, climb the ladder, get the degrees, like all of those kind of things are things that we've been conditioned to do. But what like I said, when I started out, I'm like, I just want to be happy. Like, I know that doesn't sound like some big grandiose goal. I literally just wanted to feel content and happy and fulfilled. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's missing is people think that, getting the degree is going to make them fulfilled or getting the next job in the corporate ladder is going to, and then they get there and they're like, well, this isn't doing anything. Right. Like, okay, yeah, I got the job. Now I'm more frazzled. Now I'm burnt out. Now I'm whatever. So it's all of these things. But the interesting piece is that when I grew up and being in church, right? Like God has a special purpose for us. That is something that everybody pretty much universally will accept. Okay, we've got a special purpose, but what the heck is it?
Right.
Right? So what I've done over the last few years in writing the book was really about what is your heart called to do and how can you allow yourself to do that, right? Because we all do
Mm.
have special gifts, we all do have a special purpose. And I used to kind of joke when I would speak, because it's been a while since we've done the whole speaking engagements, right? Because let's just face it, 2020 was crazy. But so when I
Yeah.
used to speak on stages, I would laugh and I would say, you guys, it doesn't matter if you're a brain surgeon or a bartender. Like, if you're happy doing your job, then that's the job that you're called to do, because we're all called to do different things and we're meant to work as a community. And so we need everybody to do all of the things, right?
Right, it's
Um
not higher or lower, it's like part
no.
of the whole. You
Yeah.
need all of those parts.
Yes. So can you imagine if everybody doing their job, whether that's cleaning or running the company or being a CEO or whatever, if they're doing that because it's what they enjoy and what they're good at, everybody would be so much happier. But
Mhm.
we get stuck in this, oh, we have to do this. We have to get the degree. We have to go to school. We have to do that job. We have to be quote unquote successful. But what if success is actually happiness? Right? That
Right.
blows people's minds.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's stop. What if success is actually happiness?
Mhm.
Yeah, and we've been working so hard towards all of the other things that society has told us success, um, looks like, or what success is defined as. Yeah, and so with religion, this is what is just my confusion,
Mhm.
is, as you said, I mean, it's when you go to church, I mean, it's common for them to say God has a calling, you have a divine purpose, etc. And so why is it that when people have certain experiences, they feel like, well, that must not be part of God's plan?
Now we get into the woo.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's
So
get
why
into the
is
woo
the
part.
woo not part of,
So the
yeah.
woo isn't well, think back in history, right? Like way back, you couldn't even pray in a certain part of the sanctuary if you weren't a priest or if you weren't this or if you weren't that. So humans have put conditions on how much intuition and how much actual connection to the divine that we can have. So it's a conditional pattern that we've been
Mm.
are am I good enough? Do I deserve to have that same communication and that same connection to God? Well, then of course, then Jesus comes, that kind of blows everything out of the water, because I mean, all the rules were broken. He wasn't from the right clan to be able to be a priest, and he wasn't able, so it was like all of these different things that got adjusted, and there
Mhm.
was a new way of then being in that divine thing. But then we still also have all of these conditions from society, and so we don't, first of all, we're too in a hurry. We don't take time to trust the inner knowing, right? The second thing is our
Mm.
brain has all of these thoughts, and when our heart and our brain are not on the same connection, they're not in the divine alignment. Your heart may be calling you saying, I am so happy and peaceful when I'm like cleaning. It makes me so happy. I feel like things are accomplished. It looks great. And then your mind is like, well, that's not a good enough job for you. Right. Or vice versa. Oh
Yeah.
my God, I would love to go and be, a surgeon for this specialty or whatever. And they're like, well, you're not from the right neighborhood. Why can you do, and your brain picks up those thoughts, right? So, or you're not good enough for that. What makes you think you didn't do good in math in third grade? Why do you
Yeah.
think you're good enough to be a surgeon? Right. So like there's all of these conflicting things. And usually our subconscious patterning, and what I call in my book the nasty little mean girl, all of the limiting beliefs that come out, they'll override what your heart is calling you to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another one is you can't make money doing that. Right? That's another one that stops everybody. Well, how would I make a living
Mhm.
doing that? Mhm.
Mhm. So just along with that, tell us about your current lifestyle and your shift in your in your choice for
Well,
happiness.
yeah, so it's been an interesting journey since since that surrender moment, and it
Mm.
really was. It was like, okay, you know what, God, I have been fighting this my entire life. I cannot fight it anymore. Because my intuition is really strong and it always has been, but for the longest time I was able to shut it out. But then I started taking care of my physical body and I started really implementing like yoga and um calming myself down because I was like, something's missing, what's going on? And so I was working on the breathing and the calming down and the being peaceful. And that just made the intuition even louder, right? Because then I was getting
Mhm.
myself
Of
calm. So
course.
so that psychic stuff came back with a vengeance. Like it was so
And
wide
now
open.
what were you doing for work or as a profession like at that point? Was
So
it
I
like
worked in corporate
conflicting?
America. Yeah, I worked in corporate. And I had a regular corporate job, it was just in the office, right? So I was like in a
Mhm.
scheduling department. And so it was a regular job, but I'm like, okay, I have to just start calming down. So once I started doing that, then I was like, you know what? This corporate thing is not working for me anymore. It doesn't align. I'm trusting that God has always provided for me. And so my husband and I talked about it and he goes, just give your notice. Like we'll figure it out. And we did. And so then I actually was doing nutritional supplements for a long time. And then that kind of morphed into now being the life coach. I took some certificate. Like I'm like, okay, I obviously, when people would come to me for a nutritional regimen to see what their physical body needed, I just intuitively would know they're not sleeping because they're fighting with their husband, or they're not sleeping because they're worried about work, or they're not able
Mm.
to focus because they're too stressed out about bills, or like those kind of things would come in for me. And I would just know that's what was going on. And so the intuition kept getting stronger and stronger as I was doing those personal consultations. Um,
Mhm.
and then I was like, okay, so then I was like, you know what? You're giving me this gift. I'm seeing what's going on with people. And sometimes it was being blurted out of my mouth before I could even get them to tell me. And I'm like, they're obviously going to know that I know things. Like, so
Right.
I'm going to have to face this at some point. And so that was when I went ahead and I was like, okay, I surrender. What should I like? Show me what to do. And in that moment, when I did that, I was like, you know what? It's this whole happiness thing. The journey that you've been on the last 2 years was to find happiness, peace, joy. That was my goal.
Yeah.
And it was like, and then I realized that the more that I allowed happiness, peace, and joy to come in, the more abundance just naturally came in with it. So after that,
Ooh.
then I just got to where I trusted everything. And so gosh, I think it was 2017. I wrote my book in 2015, which I never would have thought I was going to write a book. Um I wrote another one in 2017 or 18. We sold our house in 2017. We live in a fifth wheel now and we travel all over because my husband does the work that he does and he really enjoys it because he's out in nature, he's working with tractors and all kinds of
Oh
equipment
my
and
goodness. So you
doing
can travel
reclamation.
and you can for him and do your thing. Okay, so I'm gonna pause there because I want people to be like, "Oh my gosh!" All right, and e- everybody who listens to Rocket Fuel knows, and if you haven't listened to another a previous episode, well, now you know. Okay, my mission is to make sure that if you are called by the expert that I bring on, right? I'm trying to introduce you to people that are rocket fuel that are going to help you bust out of mediocrity, respond to your desire to be more of who you're intended to be, no matter what, right? And there are tons of different people I introduce you to. But as part of that, I don't want you to just be inspired. I want you to take action. So if you are that person that, and I know you specifically serve women, you tend to align more with serving women, right? But you feel like this is something that is interesting to me. Yes, I do have these experiences. I do have this conflict of really exploring it more. Jennifer put together just this great initial tool. It's a guide on how to get into divine alignment. She just gives you a peek. Uh, it's super easy how to start the process, and especially how Jennifer kind of explains it. And this is like her, this is your jam. right? This is your jam. So I don't want to say, oh, it's easy. You're going to read this thing and blah, you're going to be in alignment. But what's important is for you to recognize that you're probably putting unnecessarily unnecessary stress around it. And that I believe with the appropriate guidance, we can find what that alignment is and live more peacefully. So that's my this is my personal soapbox. But anyway, so this is how you can receive this wonderful guide that Jennifer put together. You can text RF for rocket fuel dash truth. Woohoo! TRUTH. RF dash truth to 411321, and you will receive this guide on how to get into divine alignment. And it's that entree, that entrance point for you to really start exploring how you can finally learn to follow that inner calling, right? And embrace the gifts that you have, figure out how they can be assets instead of feeling like they're a detriment. All right. So if you're in the US, text RF truth to 411321. If you are outside of the US, I do not forget you. I love you, Rocketeers. You can use WhatsApp, right? So text us or message us at 1-909-741-1321. That is the Catchwords app. All right. And I'm going to turn this thing off. It's delaying my voice. Sorry. And you're going to text RF truth to 1-909-741-1321 using WhatsApp. That's the Catchwords app. And in both cases, please provide your email address, because that's how you will get this wonderful gift, how to get into divine alignment. So I wanted to make sure that I mentioned that before we continue. And I'll mention it one more time at the end of the episode. But if you feel in alignment to do it, then do it now. Okay, so now you're living in your fifth wheel, and you
Yeah.
leave your corporate job. And it's one thing to feel like, okay, in my nutrition work, I'm going to utilize my intuition and such. But when did you switch over into actually supporting people who experience what you've experienced, to
Well,
actually determining that you want to coach people in this direction?
so I love what you just said about being more of who you're intended to be. That really was that point for me. That,
Mm,
okay, God, what do I do with this? Right? Like, show me what to do. And in that moment, that's when things shifted. And after that, I was like, okay, I am trusting any feeling that I know in my heart is the right thing. And of course, you pray over it, you meditate on it, you journal about it, you do all the things to make sure that you're making the right steps, right? But I just instantly knew, okay, we're changing the way we do life. Like in that moment, and this was 2 years before we sold the house, and bought the fifth wheel and all of these things. It was finally getting into that point where I was like, you know what? I know in my heart that this is something I'm meant for, something different. I need to be more of who I'm meant to be, because I had been denying that me, the wholeness of me, the psychic part of me, which was an integral part. Right?
yes.
And it doesn't have to be an intuitive gift. It can be whatever your personal gift is, whatever your personal strength is. If you're
Mm.
denying that because it doesn't fit into your family, your society, your whatever it is, um, that it causes detriment to you, just like I said, or
You will
like you said,
continue
it's
to
a
feel the
detriment.
friction.
Yes,
You'll
you will.
continue to feel it.
And so with that, for me, it was just like, okay, I'm trusting, like, and every time I get an intuitive download, I trust it. And it's not an easy thing. It feels really foreign in the beginning, because we're not taught to trust our gut instinct. We're not taught to trust our heart. We think everything through, which isn't a bad thing, but it's a bad thing if your limiting beliefs and the negative stuff in your, the negative sentences that play in your
Mhm.
head. I wanted to say soundtrack, because a lot of us have a negative soundtrack that plays
Yeah,
over and over,
over and
telling us that
over.
we can't do what we want, or we won't have the money, or it won't work out, or we're
Yep.
crazy, or what are you thinking? Why would you do that? Like, it's been so funny to me, because again, this is not, I never would have dreamed that we would be living in a fifth wheel, traveling all over. Like, that just was never anything on my radar until I started trusting that divine alignment. And it's like, this is the best of both worlds, because
Yeah.
our kids are adults now, they can do their thing, but we have the ability for me to go along with my husband where he works, and I can work now from anywhere because of trusting and falling into the idea of life coaching. And then that's kind of morphed as well into more of a spiritual business coaching, because a lot of the women that were coming to me were already entrepreneurs anyway. And when they get more into the divine alignment of what they're called to do, it naturally attracts the clients that they're meant to serve.
Interesting. That's interesting. Wow. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what you're currently doing right now, and the types of people that are typically attracted to finally deciding to tap into their gifts, right?
So yeah, so I feel like for the majority of people, the Divine Alchemy Academy that you mentioned earlier is definitely the place to start, because it's literally what it says. It's all about divine alchemy, which is transformation, which is changing things, right? When you alchemize something, it changes it. So
Mm-mm.
back in the day, alchemy was working with metal to change it into something different, right? So it's the
Mhm.
idea of transformation. And when you're at that place where you're like, okay, I'm being called to something more, but I don't even know what that means. I don't know how to get started. I don't know how to connect to my angels and guides. I don't know how to trust my inner guidance. I don't know how to feel about my gut instinct, right? Like, so you're in
Mhm.
all these places, and one of the first things you have to do is, first of all, decide that you want to change your life, right? Like, that's the first step to anything. You have
Mhm.
to decide.
And
And then
it's, you don't have to know, my understanding, I want to clarify, is you don't have to know what you're changing to. It's
mm-mm,
just when you know that there is dissonance, right? When you know that there's static, it doesn't feel right. And it's just like you're providing that pathway, the yellow brick road to say like, okay, you're going to get somewhere, but you won't be able to understand like and read that inner compass if you don't have somebody that is kind of giving you permission. It's like that safe place, I'm assuming,
it
of saying,
is.
okay, let's just explore what this is.
Well, and explore the idea of, what do you even want? What do you
Yeah.
even want in your life? Like, allowing yourself to even say, what do I want? Because I think we create, so many of us go into life in adulthood and we create a life based on what we think we're supposed to have, even though that may
Mhm.
not be what we want.
Yeah.
Right. And I've got both ways. People think I'm crazy that we live in a fifth wheel. And I have other people going, oh my God, I would love that
I
freedom. Like, I can't believe that's what you do. And I'm like,
right,
but the person that doesn't want that, it's not going to make sense. Right.
right.
And there's no right or
And that's
wrong.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's allowing yourself to even think about what you want in your life and what you like to do and what you enjoy. But you have to stop and actually consider that, because if you don't consider that, you'll just keep creating your life on default.
Mm. Right. Right.
Mhm,
That's the thing, and that wastes time.
mhm.
It wastes time. And all of a sudden right now, so, I'm intuitively speaking to the racketeer that needs to hear this, right? Um, in the sense that you're gonna have all sorts of reasons to not do something now.
Mhm.
All sorts of reasons. So that's like no excuse, because we all have them, by the way,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So it's a natural part of that transition of deciding to finally change something,
Mhm.
because inherently we want to just stay where we are because it's it feels easier. It feels easier to not stress about like, well, what's in the unknown, right? But guess what? It's not easier, because you will constantly live in friction and things won't go right. And you won't be able to see that the things that don't go right are actually messages for you to say, okay, go this way. Like I think of it, I
Mhm.
remember one day, like I said, to my husband, I was like, I'm realizing that, like, when things go wrong, it's just the universe, like, nudging me and saying, like, go there, go over
Yeah.
there," right? Instead of being like, "No, I'm gonna push through the thing that feels wrong," and then realizing, like, "Well, but why am I pushing through it? Like, why?" It's some brain thing. Like, it's a piece of logic, data, societal
It's programming.
programming that is
Mhm.
saying, "No, but you have to do that because XYZ." But it's like, "No, but actually, no, no, you
Mhm.
don't. No, you don't have to."
Right. Well, and that's what's so this is so crazy, right? Is we don't think we forget to say, wait a minute, I don't have to do this. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like you
It
don't have
sometimes it
to do
feels like
anything.
this force that's
Mhm.
forcing you to do the thing. You don't even know what it is, this like invisible force.
Right.
And it's that programming.
Mhm. Well,
It's
and that's a lot of my clients, that's what we talk about, and one of the things we try to, really bring out and bring awareness to, because anytime you bring awareness to something, it's going to shed light on it, and then you're gonna be able to see it a little bit differently. So, I always look at programs, patterns, and paradigms. So, the programs are the things that you've learned subconsciously, the paradigms is like the paradigm that you grew up in, like what everybody else is doing, right? And then the patterns are like you just do it because that's what everybody else did. It's just a pattern
Mhm.
that you've learned. It's like
Yeah. It's like, "Oh, I didn't realize that this is what I always do.
mhm,
This is what my family always does on
mhm.
the holiday or the this or that or what
Yeah.
yeah, whatever it is." This is a fascinating conversation. I hope it's of service to our listeners that that really needed to hear this. I mean, I love this stuff because it's just to me it's transformational, right? But it's so important for people to find their right teacher, right? Their right teacher, their right coach, or what. And I strongly feel that when you're so ingrained in a certain way, like it is nearly impossible for you to bust out of what's mediocre for you without some sort of rocket fuel,
Mhm.
right? Get you into the next orbit. And so, Jennifer, you are clearly rocket fuel for those people that you have served. Hopefully, for some people, some of our Rocketeers that are listening. And I thank you so much for just shedding light on this dilemma, especially for women that are practicing Christians. You know, they respect their faith and they fear exploring something more. So I want to give you Rocketeers that have been listening this opportunity once again to text to receive this simple guide. It's like 5 pages or less. And what I love is that you provide you provide some instructions like, okay, this is what you do. Just take an hour, do this, like start opening up. I think you also gave a link to one of your free courses in the PDF, I believe. And in the email you also gave us a link on how we can get on your calendar. So I appreciate all of that. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, Jennifer. And this is how you guys can get it. Text RF-truth to 411321 and make sure that you provide your email address if it asks you. If it doesn't, that means you've texted another catchword, so that's cool. Or if you're outside of the US, you can use WhatsApp and you can text catchwords to 109 741 1321, and the message will be RF truth. And voila, you will get this right in your email inbox. So don't just look for it, actually do it, because Jennifer put a lot of time and effort into doing this. So Jennifer, any last minute words for our Rocketeers?
Yeah. Just it sounds so cliche, but trust your heart, right? Like just listen to what if you are in that space where you're like, there is something more, what am I missing? Allow yourself to search for it. Allow yourself to ask the questions. Allow yourself to do some changes and give yourself grace, right? Like embodied grace is all about being in a space where you're like, okay, this is where I've been so far. And now I want to allow myself to explore what I'm truly meant for.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's perfect. And you have 2 books?
I have 2 books and a journal and then some other books that I've been a part of.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So they can be found at divinealchemyacademy.com. Is that what it is? Or what's the
If
website? I'm
you go
sorry.
to divinealchemyacademy.com, there's gonna be in the menu bar, you'll find where the books are, but you can also find them all on Amazon.
On Amazon. Okay.
Mhm.
So Lonnberg is how she spells her last name. You could find it in the show notes as well. I don't want you to miss out. But honestly, if you are intrigued, I would encourage you to look into one of her programs because that is going to be the fastest path to change. Alrighty. With that being said, I hope you guys have a rocking day. Bye now. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. Look, every one of our episodes is boosted by a value-packed keyword called a catchword. Yeah. This allows our audiences to text to receive even more value from our guests. So take advantage of that great value. And if you share your expertise by guesting on podcasts or TV or speaking in front of live or digital audiences, then you're leaving anonymous fans behind. So go get a catchword at catchwords.com, KETCH words.com, and use podcast20 as a promo code for 20% off your setup fee. Look, make sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the Rocket Fuel podcast so you never miss your jolt of rocket fuel. Until next time, adios.